Okay. Here's one of the key things, and you know, when we talk about the company vision, confidence, strategy, yeah, great. This is one of the real big issues. Okay, I could almost end the presentation here, but then this would be really uncomfortable silence. One of the issues about IT for the most part, for most companies out there, is a tool to achieve whatever your goal is in terms of servicing your customers. It's not what you're there to do. And one of the big challenges is that IT doesn't do that. It doesn't seamlessly integrate with what you're trying to do to connect with your customers. We try to make it so that it does, so you can just dealing with your customers. So that's a big goal of ours. As far as us goes, we founded in 2007. We're actually in August, we'll be celebrating 5 years in business. And yay. We also have had for 4 years now an annual picnic that will be in August to celebrate that in lieu of the luncheon hour. And you're all invited to that. We're about 10 employees, give or take, full-time and part-time, all mid-sized business. And focus on business impact and end-user experience. One of the terms that Microsoft started using about 6 years ago is end-user experience, and I think it's a great term. Because what it deals with is it deals with the end user's ability to get their job done, you know, and whether or not they have to go through a whole bunch of hoops. So if they have to enter 6 different passwords, if they have to enter yes or no, if they have to reboot, if they have to, that's a bad user experience, even if they get their job done. So how efficient can they be? And we like to focus on that, and we also like to focus on the business impact. So one of the things we try to do with our customers is we try to understand what they need to do in order to service their customers. What's the difference between an entry screen that takes 5 seconds to load and an entry screen that loads almost instantaneously? Is there a difference? Why? All that fun stuff. This is the slide that you've seen. How many of you, is this your first luncheon hour? Okay, cool, thank you. It's a dog and pony today, so, you know. This is the slide you've seen at those of you who've been to our other luncheon hours. This is still all the fun stuff we do, yay. Whenever we're talking to the CEOs, CFOs, whoever's responsible for IT, that's the non-IT person, these are the 2 comments that we hear from them when they're talking about why they're not happy with their status quo. It should just work, okay? And it shouldn't be that hard. Why do they have to go through all these gyrations? Why doesn't it just work? These are 2 things we're very, very keen on. Now notice there's no technology behind that. Just fairly straightforward statements. So one thing I want to point out here, okay, these are our tools. We'll talk about these a little bit. So monitoring, 24/7. We get the alerts, you can get the alerts as well as far as when something isn't appropriate. We'll talk specifically about that a bit. Antivirus, web monitoring and filtering, backup disaster recovery, yada, yada, yada. No finger pointing. One of the other issues that we've heard a lot of times is where there's a problem. Problems over there with those guys. An application doesn't work. Well, it works for us, so it must be your hardware. No, I'm not saying anything wrong with the hardware, so it must be the application. Well, it didn't load, so it's probably your internet. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we get back to that, it should just work. What we do is we take responsibility to contact the vendors, whether it be application vendors, service providers, the like, and we resolve the issue. Okay? And if someone gives us the runaround, we know that they're giving us the runaround, but we're there to fix it just like they are. Okay? And hardware as a service, software as a service, cloud-based computing, the whole 9 yards. This is also key. We keep up with the newer technology. How many of you were here for the Windows 8 luncheon hour about 3 months ago? Okay. Remember, anybody here hear about Microsoft Surface? Okay, that's their new tablet they just announced yesterday that they're going to be actually building. Now, if you remember 3 months ago, we demonstrated Windows 8 on a tablet. We showed you what that was going to be like. And one of the key things we said that's going to be critical is how are they going to deal with the hardware for the tablets? Because that was very much up in the air. Well, Microsoft just answered that question partially yesterday by announcing they're going to manufacture their own line of tablets, codenamed Surface. And Microsoft, in their infinite wisdom, used a word, because they were apparently running out of words in the English language, that already reflected, they already have a product called Surface. You may have heard about it. It was literally it was a desktop where you could move. Yeah. So now they have a tablet called Surface as well. No one's going to get confused by that. But, so now, 3 months ago we were talking about it. Now, there's actually action being taken. So we keep track of what's going on ahead of time. We've been having conversations with our customers as to whether or not the Windows 8 tablets actually will give them a benefit or a bang for the buck. Okay, same thing with Server 2012 or Server 8, whatever you want to call it. And here's another key thing, is we don't sell you new technology unless it makes sense for the business. So our normal relationship is based on a fixed monthly fee with our customers for giving these services. That's what's important to us as far as revenue stream. So we don't want to sell you this stuff if you don't need it, because then you might drop us from the monthly contract. And that's really what's critical to us. So when we have discussions with you, you know, and if you want to, we'll go into detail, that we're talking about it because it makes sense, not because we just want to sell you stuff. The exception to that, I mean, if it's really cool, you know, I mean, come on, that's different, right? We share our knowledge. 4th year, and we've never, and we will never, we never keep track. You know, there's some people who have said, hey, you've got students coming here, and they're not going to buy anything. You've got IT consultants, they're your competition. You've got people who are unemployed. I don't care and never will. You know, the goal is for us to share the knowledge. That's what we do, that's what we're going to do. So we're never going to be those guys who hold the knowledge back and won't explain it to you. With our customers, we often will say, how geeky do you want us to be? If you want, we will be so geeky in our explanation to you as far as what's going on. You'll never ask us a question again. And sometimes that's needed. But sometimes it's also a, no, we just want to know what do we do and how do we do it. Okay? But we've done this, the monthly newsletter. This was our 50th issue, was just the last one.
Right.
So we've had 50 monthly issues of our newsletter, again, which we may talk about, hey, this special deal is going on, but usually, I think the last one talked about where to get some free ebooks from Microsoft. It talked about some of the newer technologies that's coming on. We don't sell, we try to inform. Oh, and by the way, Sarah was the one who pointed out the ebooks. So. We also talk to groups. We talk to chamber groups, we talk to IT groups, we basically talk to whoever. I think I'm talking to a Rotary group in a month or two. We will go out and talk anytime, anywhere. Special training events, the last couple of years, we have done full-day training events partnering with DeVore, where if you make a donation to a nonprofit, you get actual hands-on training for some of the sequels. I don't know if we're going to do that again this year. We're trying to figure out. We did put up the YouTube, and then finally we've got our blog. You know, and so again, most of that stuff is not about selling.
2,300 subscribers, Bob?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. And I would love to get more. So, you know, share that with people. Yeah, and it's been fun, actually. So, on the cloud, Office 365, formerly known as BPOS. We were one of the early adopters to that puppy, and actually there's a partner levelship, a level with Microsoft that I think we were one of only 3 in Northeast Ohio. I heard that at that meeting we were at. I think there were only 3 Cloud Essential partners in Northeast Ohio, and we were one of them. And we've been one for over a year. Yeah, early adopters, okay? That said, we've talked with clients who have opted not to go with Office 365 for their email, and that's cool too, because sometimes it's not the most sensible thing to do. So we've got folks who have Exchange as well. Rack space for hosted servers up in the cloud. So we're not going to come in with our one tool, our one strategy, or one methodology and say, here's what you need, this tool. You know, when your favorite tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We want to actually talk, discuss with what your needs are, with what your company's goals are in terms of moving in the future, and we want to make sure it's the best fit. And the best fit based on what your growth projections are for the next year or two. We want stuff to keep working. Or we can go into the detail. But essentially what we have is we monitor. We keep track of your assets. And a majority of that we can actually do remotely. And that's including if your workforce is remote from you. Right now we've got a client who has folks out in China. We are monitoring the laptops that they've got out in China. And we'll actually be adding their network in China pretty soon. We have clients who have servers in Colombia, England, Mexico. Yeah, those are the ones that come to mind. Asset management. I don't even know what we have. I hear that. Okay. To give you one example on a screen of ours. So this is an inventory, and actually it's for us. But this is an automated inventory of our hardware. Some of the hardware's right here. Some of the hardware's right here. You can actually maintain now inventories on your mobile phones as well. We can also take a look at how the CPUs, the hard drives, memory, all that good fun stuff. So if somebody says something like, how old are the computers? We've got a drill down on every processor that we're monitoring for our network or for that customer's network. So we can take a look at the hardware that's behind those processors and say, this is old, this is new, whatever. If somebody wants to ask about the software that's installed. Yeah.
Do you have an opinion about which ones you think are better?
So do I have an opinion over which ones I think are better?
I'm sure you have an opinion, but what would be your opinion?
Well, here's the first discussion that we want to have. And unfortunately, again, I'm a member of the, I'll never give you a simple answer to a simple question.
Of course.
Okay? We have some clients that have shop floors. And the shop floors, they have really old machines that are just connected to another machine, you know, whatever, drill press. And that's all they do day in, day out. They can use old machines till they die. So from that standpoint, it turned on this morning, yay. Although we'll want to have a spare or two, okay? Whereas for somebody else, if somebody else is saying, I've got sales folks, and those sales folks are going out and doing presentations, okay, we want to make sure that those things are crisp and clean. So part of the challenge there is for us to have that kind of discussion. So to give you an example, we had a meeting about a week or so ago with one of our clients who was looking to evaluate, it's basically a quarterly meeting, who's looking to evaluate their current servers. So I was able to come in and say, here's the CPU utilization, here's the disk utilization, here's the memory utilization, so here's how it's been utilized, those resources over the past 6 months. And if we can see, for example, that the disk drive, we're getting less and less space because we're starting to fill it up, then I can extrapolate that and say, well, within 6 months or 8 months or a year or 2 years, you're going to start running out of space. But you tell me what's going on with your business. What's going to happen over the next 6 months that's going to impact that? Are you looking to bring on any new clients? Are you looking to bring on new employees? If so, that's going to have an impact as well. So we can have those conversations way ahead of time and make decisions when we can afford to take our time and make sure it's the right decision. Okay? So I'm avoiding answering your question directly because we want to make sure we get the right
No, I
answer.
think you answered the question. You said that it's all depending on someone's need.
Yep.
I think that's a correct answer.
And the nice thing is, the asset management It's automatic. If you add a device to the network, just plug in a new computer, add a new printer, it's going to pick it up. We'll see it. So, 24/7, 365 monitoring. So what happens is, the software that we use actually goes out every few minutes and interrogates the devices, whether they be Windows devices or intelligent printers or the like, anything that can answer us basically. And it says, tell us how you're doing. Give us the key performance. How busy is your CPU? How much memory are you using? So any particular errors that have happened. And then reports it up to our cloud server. Every one of those devices is configured by its role. It's a Windows 7 workstation. It's a Server 2008 box. It's a domain controller. It's a whatever it is. And if any of those measurements fall outside of operational parameters in terms of what we want, it can raise an alert and will raise an alert. Now, some of those things are not really bad, but it tells us that it's starting to head that way, which is really nice because that way we can get it before it becomes an issue. The most common of that, disk space. So we have alerts raised when disk space reaches 80% full. Is 20% bad? Not really. But it's a lot better to work on it at that point in time than waiting until it's 1% empty. So the nice thing is there we can take a look at it, see what's going on, clean it up. And the end user's never interrupted. There's never a problem or an issue. Similarly, if there's a CPU utilization that is like 100% utilization, that's not a problem. But if it's that way for an hour or two, that's a problem. And our alerts can either be they just get registered in the site, because they're not that critical, but we want to take a look at them now and again. Or they send us an email, because yeah, you should take a look at it, or they can actually text us, if it's immediate. Again, long-term trend analysis. One thing that's really difficult is if you're thrown into the middle of something and you have no idea what it was like yesterday. So, customer says, or our customer wouldn't have this issue, but somebody says, hey, come take a look at our network. It's really slow right now. It was fine yesterday. What changed? I don't know, but it's slow today. Well, to give you an idea, we had one client who went with our monitoring solution and went to meet with them about 2 weeks afterwards. And it was a Friday afternoon, right before noon actually. And they had a call from one of their end users who called to complain that the system had it was right after 12 o'clock, and the system had just slowed down to a crawl, just like it does every Friday. And they were like, oh, okay, we'll take a look, but everything looks okay, because all the servers were responding, and they were okay, and life was good, and it was okay. We took a look on the monitoring, and we could see this was a SQL server that they were attacking, so it was a database server. And we could see, because we were specifically monitoring, that right at 12 o'clock, all the resources pegged. So we knew that right there was the culprit. It wasn't network traffic, it wasn't the workstations, it wasn't the server in general, it was the SQL specifically. And it took us about 5 minutes to look at it, and we found out that someone had scheduled a job to run at noon when they meant midnight. Okay? The person who scheduled the job looks at the job results and yeah, it ran every time it was supposed to. The person who takes a look at the network health, everything looked okay, but since we knew specifically where the issue happened, it took us 5 minutes to figure this out. Okay? They had had their people spend a couple of hours. In this case, this was a company where we were working with their IT department. Because we know ahead of time. I can't stress enough. Customers one of our agreements with customers is what we call a silver platform, which is where we monitor only for a relatively low monthly fee. And that means that if there's a problem, we can actually look at the history of the server, the history of the network, as opposed to coming in blind. So why do you care about the monitoring? Because we deal with issues. And from our standpoint, if we can handle them before they really grow or expand into significant issues, that's good for us because it's a lower cost in terms of our time. We can actually resolve the issue more efficiently. So we're spending less of our expense. And you're not having downtime because it worked. It was resolved before it became an issue. So you're happy, I'm happy. It's a win-win. This is actually a relationship with where the more effective we are, the lower our costs are, so we make more money as greedy American, corporation. And your costs are less in terms of interruption of service for yourself. You're happy. So it's a win on both sides, and that's critical. Also, you get monthly reporting. So you can see the health of your network and all that good stuff. So we've just got very simply availability. The fact that we also get alerts that are telling us sometimes that a hard drive is going to fail soon. So we know ahead of time. So we can say, hey, we need to replace this drive now. And with most contracts, it's not an additional cost except you have to pay for the hard drive. But then we can schedule to do that at the end user's convenience, as opposed to the hard drive just crashed. Did you have a good backup by any chance? And this is just some examples of some of the metrics that we have on some of the hard drives as far as like queue lengths and disk reads, all that good fun silliness. And the fun thing is how many folks have been hit up with my computer's slow? When? I don't know, it just seems slow. Well, with this, we can actually look to see if there's resources being pegged. Is it running out of memory? Is the CPU being overworked? Is the hard drive crashing all over the place? Is there bandwidth issues on the network? So we can look at specific issues. And we found a number of issues where we can look at it, we can go, yeah, you're running low on memory. So instead of buying a whole new computer and doing a whole migration, let's spend $50 and pop some more memory into the desktop. Because all of the other charts are relatively low. Except memory is always, pegged near maximum. That takes 5 minutes for us to figure it out. So one of the things we want to do is we first want to take a look at your network. Because in a lot of cases, your network works, but does it work optimally? And we found that a number of cases, for example, backups. Our backups actually being run regularly. Here's a funny thing. How do you know they work? Have you actually restored anything from a backup? That's one of the key jobs of our interns, is to actually do routine restores on our customers' backups so that we know that they actually work. We've run into situations where clients have depended upon another party, and it turned out not so much. We don't want to be in that position. Same thing for antivirus. We actually monitor the antivirus and make sure that the updates are being applied to all the workstations. It's being handled appropriately. So we tell people when something was found, not the other way around. And in some cases, security, how do I put this? Security is in the eyes of the beholder, okay? I get back to that classic test. You live in an apartment building. You have two keys. You have a key to the outside and you have a key to your apartment. Okay? The outside key is to make sure that only people who live in the apartment building get in. You're walking up, you open your door, you're about to walk in, you look behind you, and there's a stranger, complete total stranger, walking behind you with a whole load of groceries. Or munchkins, down Target. What do? Do you let them in? Or do you lock them out? If you're security conscious, you lock them out. Because you don't know who that person is. You don't know if they live there. If you're a nice person, you let them in. Thank you. Those babies could be terrorists. And from what I've heard, occasionally, it's the chemical warfare that's just... But that concept right there, and that's the kind of concept we communicate with our customers, is instead of saying, do you want this level, no. Where do you want your company to be in terms of the level of security? If you want it to be very secure, we can use tools such as Microsoft Baseline Security Analyzer that will give you some very hard specific points to increase the security of your network. And if you want to make sure, no, we need to make sure everybody can get access, we're going to explain to you the risks. But then it's your risk to assume. And we'll work with you, either way. But we explain those concepts, we have that dialogue. Excuse me. Again, scans are run automatically, so we see the new stuff. It's added automatically. So we're on. Now, what we'd rather do is we'd rather talk with you and make sure that it's being added, that the appropriate stuff is being added at the appropriate time in the appropriate way. Better still for all of us, and that's part of the monthly fee. So it's not a, well, I don't want to call those guys because we're just going to end up having, no. Call us. Let's make sure you're getting the right hardware. Let's make sure you're getting the right software. Okay. And I might add, we give you, if you want it, we give you full access to our monitoring site for your resources. So if you feel like you want to come and take a look at it, and we'll walk through it with you, as far as what you're seeing, and so you can see the inventory, you want to run reports, absolutely have a blast. As opposed to if you'd rather just us do it, absolutely, we'll have a blast. Either way works for us. We also track warranty. So, and it happens automatically in the case of like Dell, HP, IBM, where it'll actually give us when's the warranty being expiring. So, you know, you're not running into that, oh, that expired 2 months ago, and now it's broken, kind of thing. Benefits are wonderful. So, I love it when I get one way ahead. Okay. So hardware assets, we track them. We can even, in a lot of cases, to tell you whether or not you can add more memory or you have to replace it all. Reads it automatically. Similarly, software assets. Both from a patch standpoint, whatever's been installed that we wasn't authorized, and a detailed inventory. So if somebody asks, well, maybe we've got, this is very common, is a company, we say, what version of Office are you running? And the answer is all of them. You know, because somebody's got 2010 over there, someone's got 2007, all these people have 2003, so on and so forth. We can actually tell you which one's which. We can tell you which desktop is running which version of Office, which is great. And this gets back into the question of which ones do you replace. So we can say if someone says, hey, well, we want to go and we want to upgrade so we've got everybody on one version of Office, we can tell you specifically which guys needs updating. Okay, 5 minutes. Boom, there's your answer. But otherwise, someone has to go and check all these. No, it's right there. It's built in. In some cases, there are actually relatively simple things you can do to just become, you know, compliant. You know, for example, in Office 365 for your email, there's actually a domain-wide configuration that you can do that will essentially configure you for HIPAA compliance. We can work with you on these things. If there are requirements in terms of security, encryption, any of those kind of things, we can work with you.
For that asset management, is there a data acquisition piece that acquires the version of Office, for example, as opposed to having a data administrator having to keep that up to date?
It does it automatically.
Yeah, that's cool.
So what happens is there's a piece of software. There's two ways of doing this. It's called agent-based and agentless. And most software that does it's called RMM, remote monitoring and management, is one or the other. And agentless means there's one device on your network that goes out and pulls the information automatically. Agent-based means you install that piece of software on all the devices and it pulls. Level Platforms, which is the company that we use, actually has both. So what we can do is we put an agentless tool that's on the network at the company, and it goes out, and so it'll detect what version of Office, what version of Adobe Acrobat, all that kind of fun stuff. But then there's also, we can put agents on the laptops that go off-site, and they'll do the same thing. And so it's all automatically, I believe the asset scan is run every couple of hours of the way. So, what's that? Defaults every 4 hours. We check to see what if anything, has been changed.
And it will pull license keys and whatnot too.
Oh, yeah.
So it will pull your operating system keys and it will pull the, like for Office. You can see what key is actually installed on the system. So if you want to go after compliance type thing, you
Yeah.
actually have to info.
So think about that for a second. We have to reinstall, we have to rebuild the desktop. We can't find the envelope that had that stupid key on it. Okay? Or someone says, how many licenses do we have? We've got that information and it's automatic. So there are a set of reports that all deal as well with the compliance. Like Ken was saying, we've already got the keys as far as maintenance on that. There's some things we can configure automatically, but we work with you. Preventative maintenance. The reason that this is important is because in a lot of cases, you use the traditional break-fix model, which is when something's broken, we fix it. So from your standpoint, the only time you make a call to us is if you're already experiencing downtime. So you're already experiencing productivity loss. Similarly, my goal as a business owner is to get more of that money. So my interest is in spending more time and hours doing that. Your interest is already predicated on the idea that something's broken. Preventative maintenance gets away from that. Preventative maintenance is where we'd rather things not be broken in the first place. And from my standpoint, I'm already being paid, as a greedy business owner. So I'd rather stuff not break either. So we're both leaning on the same direction. And there's no longer maybe I should have somebody come out and take a look at it. No, there's something wrong. We want to come out and take a look at it before it gets worse. So we're saving you money and improving productivity. The productivity, again, it's the downtime. We're minimizing that. Extend the longevity of your systems. Because in some cases, you might be able to just tweak this and you'll still be able to use that device for longer. Again, let's just add some memory. We probably had about 4 or 5 workstations where all we've had to do is just add, $50, $60 worth of memory, and boom, they're good to go. Okay. Enhance employee productivity, yeah, whatever. Really, it's the user experience. Because one of the other things we do is help desk. If somebody has a problem and can't quite figure out how to use Word in this way, or Excel, or Outlook, call us. Call us. We will have that discussion. That's what we do. So we've had companies who have, we're about to have our, we really need our workers who are off-site. They need to be able to do this, that, or the other thing. Let's talk about that. Now, right now, IT is what I call the solution-rich environment. There are a dozen different ways. Whatever it is that you want to do from a technical standpoint, there's a dozen different ways to do it. Some of them cost more, some of them cost less, some of them you have to go through more gyrations, some of them are more secure, some of them are more vendor-specific, whatever. We can talk about all of those and figure out what the best way is for you moving forward on these things. Okay? Reduce wait times. A majority of that stuff we can do remotely. So in a lot of cases, probably 60–70% of the case, someone calls us up with an issue, we connect with them remotely right then and there and deal with it. And by the way, some of this stuff, we're actually adding more features and functions and all that fun stuff. So for example, defragging of drives. We're just scheduling them. You know, it's not a question of whether you need it or not, we'll just run it. Same thing for error checking. We've got a routine whereby if someone, if we get an error that, hey, the hard drive just detected errors, we'll just send out a little pic that'll make it so the next time they boot their machine, it'll automatically do the check disk, and just contact them and say, hey, when you leave tonight, restart your system. And we'll get emailed the results. So we've made it so that the only impact on the end user with a possible disk failure is they have to restart their computer when they leave. But in return, we see an initial diagnostic, which is not the end of the world necessarily. We'll run a deeper diagnostic and we'll get the results so we can take a look at it. And if it turns out that now we need to start talking about replacing the hard drive, we can do that while it's still working. And this is something, I'll be honest, we're not as far along as we should be. And part of it is because most of our customers don't want to see these. But we have a slew of reports that we can give to our end customers. And right now we do, I think, executive summary and one other report. But we've got all this information that can give you an idea of what's going on with your hardware, what's going on with your software, and it's automatic. So this is not where we keep you in the dark, or there's a distance between us. No, we want you as involved with your IT as you want to be. This is also one that a number of our clients are like, everything's working, why do I want to meet with you? Which is really good for the ego, you know. But we want to do this. In some cases, some clients, we do it remotely. So we do it with a video, use link. But we want to know what's going on, what kind of changes are going to happen over the next 90, 180 days with your organization. Because if we know ahead of time, we can be prepared and we can either minimize what the expense would be, or we can say, hey, here's a really cool way you could do this. So we want to be an actual strategic asset of your company. You know, a lot of IT companies started from a technician deciding I'm going to go on my own and do these things. I actually was, for about 20 years, for 6 years I was the IT director over at City of Cleveland Heights, and for 14 years I was CIO at Patio Enclosures over in Macedonia. Patio is about $80 million company, 40 sites, all that kind of fun stuff. I get the strategic value of IT, and I also get the strategic value of business and business process. So we're not going to just say, hey, this server needs, no, we actually want to talk about business process. The idea that is often used or stated is, we want to be your IT department. We want to be your CIO, your network admin, your desktop support, all that good fun stuff. But I also will say that probably a third of our clients have existing IT staff, and in which case we extend them somehow. In some cases, it's we have a particularly strong knowledge base on SQL, for example, and so there's a couple companies where we're their SQL administrator, their database administrator. That's the majority of what we do. There's other clients where they can handle the desktop, but we handle the servers, the networks. And there's others where we just handle stuff when they're either too busy or it's a little bit beyond them. All of those are fine. All of those are fine. All these things are important, and all of these things are good bullet points as far as what we accomplish. Really, it gets down to, it should just work, and it shouldn't be that hard. As we move forward, companies are going to be more and more reliant on IT so that they can do more with less. So that their support people can support more customers per person, so that their production people can produce more, so that from a medical standpoint, that they can deal with their patients and communicate with us. All of that is more with less, more with less, more with less. And it's tough to do that if A, your IT is not reliable, and B, you can't communicate with the people who are supporting your IT. Because then it's like, well, we assume we can grow by 20%, but I don't know. We want to make it so that this works, and it just works. And when it makes sense to implement new technologies or to replace older technologies, you do it because it made sense. That's what we do.